It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Last time when humans set foot on moon was in 1972. After that, due to huge cost of conducting lunar missions, future manned missions to moon were cancelled for indefinite amount of time. But in 2017, NASA revived the lunar human spaceflight program and named it Artemis, aiming to reach moon by 2025. There are going to be 6 planned missions, first of which is uncrewed test flight going to be launched on 29th August 2022. So what exactly is Artemis program and why does NASA want to visit moon again? Well, let's find out. NASA is conducting the Artemis program with the hope of establishing a small human habitat. Instead of standalone missions, Artemis program will have series of missions with specific goals in mind. The first Artemis mission will be uncrewed and will act as a trial mission testing every system in depth before the crewed Artemis 3, which is scheduled to launch in 2025. The Artemis missions will be carried using SLS rocket, which is the most powerful rocket NASA have created up to this date. SLS rocket along with the Orion spacecraft will lift off from Kennedy Space Center on 29th August. For the first 2.5 minutes, the SLS rocket will gain momentum and then rotate around Earth for another 6 minutes. Then the second stage will push the spacecraft Orion out of Earth's orbit and towards the Moon. After traveling more than 380,000 kilometers for around 10 days, the Orion spacecraft will enter the Moon's orbit, specifically distant retrograde orbit. This orbit is highly stable because of interaction with two Lagrange points. This orbit will take the Orion spacecraft 100 kilometers above the lunar surface and then out to 64,000 kilometers beyond the Moon. Once the Orion spacecraft have entered into the DR orbit, it will perform various operations for around 6 to 19 days. After that, the spacecraft will start its return journey to the Earth. The spacecraft will leave the DR orbit and travel for another 10 to 19 days before entering Earth's atmosphere. The crew module will perform splashdown somewhere in Pacific. Even if humans are trying to rely more on renewable resources, we cannot deny the fact that we still have a long way to go. And Moon, in this regard, has a substantial natural resources which could be exploited in future. Moon contains an abundant amount of elements like hydrogen, silicon, iron, magnesium, aluminium and many more. So through this Artemis mission, NASA wants to show its prominence on Moon for extraction of these resources in future. To know more about lunar resources and its extraction, click on the link in the right hand corner. Through Artemis program, NASA is developing different space infrastructure to enable sustainable moon journey. For example, a mini space station which when going to and fro from the moon would serve as a communication hub, science laboratory and short-term habitational module is under development. This mini space station will act as a foundation to much more capable space station during future ventures to Mars. Through Artemis missions, NASA is planning to develop a base camp which would consist of 3 modules, which are foundational surface habitat, habitable mobility platform and lunar terrain vehicle. This would be the first step to colonize Moon and use it as a launchpad for further space missions. This will also help us get an idea of colonizing Mars. As Artemis program consists of series of planned missions, it will act as a foundation for sustainable human presence on Moon. It will also enable us to visualize future human expedition mission to Mars. NASA is using Moon not only to train itself for its long-term goal for human presence on Mars, but also building certain infrastructure like Gateway, which will eventually help humans to make flights to Moon and Mars more sustainable.